Dirt is amazing. I love it. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I feel like you should know this about me before I begin my story because it helps you understand how exceedingly happy I was when I was in Tanzania working on a permaculture farm for a few days. And I got to play with compost and gardens. It was great. Like, it's a lot easier to just throw some compost on top of the garden and then use the garden tool to just sort of like rake it in, and it works and it's fine. But it's so much better if you just sit in the garden for like 2 hours and like individually every single inch of the garden put all of the compost in by hand, because then you get to talk to the plants and you get to feel like how good like the dirt feels when you put your hands down in it. You get to get covered in it. And it's an experience, like a really good experience. And so that was one of my favorite memories of being in Africa, sitting in the dirt. I've always had like a lot of connection though with being outside, being outdoors, gardening, being in the woods. It's been like one of the biggest parts of my life since I was a little kid. One of my favorite things to do when I was younger was to run wild with my dog. I say dog, she wasn't 100% a dog, she was actually like 3/4 wolf. I don't know how my parents got her, but she was my best friend. Her name was Missouri, and she was basically Nymeria, and I was basically Arya Stark because I like playing with swords a lot, and I had a wolf. So, it was Game of Thrones, just with less death. Got in a lot of trouble too. So I would run wild with her a lot, and I grew up in kind of like a suburban neighborhood at the time. Turns out, dogs who are actually mostly wolf aren't really supposed to stay contained in little suburban backyards. She would regularly break through the steel fence and escape. So she had to go away to live with my grandparents, who had a lot of property. Turns out 5-year-old kids also aren't meant to live in suburban neighborhoods inside of little backyards. I would also regularly escape. Unfortunately, I didn't get sent to live with my grandparents. Pretty sad. But I did get to go visit, and when I was with them, I would always go out and explore the woods with my dog, and we would have all sorts of really great adventures. Be like going down to the cemetery by way of the creek. Totally wasn't allowed to do that, totally did it anyways. Lots of other things. Because I just felt this really great connection to being outdoors and getting to explore and be free. As I got older, I unfortunately had a lot of troubles with my family. I didn't really have a good relationship with them pretty much at any point in my life, with my parents specifically. But things started to get really, really rocky as I sort of like started to get around 12 years old. A little bit of background. My parents are really, really, really radical about their religion. They're like, if you aren't wearing a skirt that goes down past your knees, that's super, super, super inappropriate. You may as well be walking around naked. So that was the kind of family I grew up in. And then a little bit of background on me. I'm super queer. Didn't go over well. So we had a rocky relationship for a while, and one of the things that I would oftentimes do was run away out of the house for a day, sometimes stay the night outside, and go explore the woods. At that time I lived in a really rural part of Indiana, so there was plenty of woods that people like to deer hunt in. As long as you didn't go wearing brown in the fall, you were fine. Otherwise, they might think you were a deer and shoot you. Thankfully, like that didn't happen. So the woods sort of like became my home, and it was the first place I ever really felt like I had a home, was outside, because it was a break from all of the places that were not safe feeling for me. So as I grew older though, and had to do a lot more at high school and all of that, then I was stuck in a classroom a lot, didn't have a lot of time to go outside, had a lot of time to sit inside at a desk, and I have a really short attention span, so that was really difficult for me, and I started to feel like a lot less connected to what made me feel like alive and what made me feel free. And that's sort of how it'd been up until earlier this year. Spending a lot of time not doing those things. And then I got the amazing opportunity to go to East Africa, and I got to spend a lot of time outside there, and it was great. And so I had all of these really cool experiences, like gardening, or one day I climbed up to the top of a mountain by myself, starting in the morning when everybody else I was with was at church. I have a bad history with church, so I didn't feel like going to church. And so I climbed up the mountain, and it took me forever because I'm clearly not super in shape, and also because I get distracted by flowers. And I eventually got up there. And I like walked past into this one area of the mountain, and it was this really amazing thing because it was like all of the other sounds in the world stopped, and the only thing that I could hear was the wind blowing through the trees. And it was just this really profound experience, and it felt really, really spiritual and really just different to me. And it was sort of towards the beginning of the trip, and it really just started to reconnect me to that place that like I feel as home, like within myself. And it was really, really special that I got to have that. So it felt really good. So I'm really thankful because, I mean, going on the trip really gave me just like the space to reconnect to that, and not only to like have it while I was there, but I've been able to make that happen since I've come home also. I spend a lot of time working outside with kids. I take 5-year-olds out into the woods, and we get to play swords and like Game of Thrones, but without the death, definitely. First rule of my job is nobody dies. So yeah, it's really amazing to me that I was able to finally break out and just go somewhere so far away from anywhere that I've ever been able to call home, and still find home there and rediscover home somewhere new, and then be able to keep like that home alive even now that I've come back to the States. So yeah, outside is awesome. This is my story.